They wrote the songs, they sang the hits, they filled stadiums and topped the charts, and then watched somebody else cash the check. This is the story of 12 R&B and soul legends who built empires for other people and had to fight, sue, or die broke just to get what was theirs. Number 1 still hasn't been made right. Number 12. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke is remembered as the king of soul, but
at first I thought it was him.
But before he ever controlled a note of his own business, he learned the hard way what the music industry could take from a black artist in the 1950s. Cooke's breakout hit, You Send Me, was recorded for Keane Records in 1957 and shot straight to number 1.
Should do things for your memory's sake. It's a beauty.
Selling well over 1 million copies. But according to Cooke's own label history, the royalties owed to him from those Keane recordings reportedly never fully materialized. Rather than chase the label through years of litigation, Cooke and his business partner J.W. Alexander negotiated to take back the rights to his unreleased Keane masters. In place of the money, he was actually owed a workaround, not a payout. It was a moment that reportedly shaped everything that came after. In 1959, Cooke did something almost no black artist in America had done. He started his own label, SAR Records, along with his own publishing company, so he would never again have to hope a label's accountant did the honest thing. Through SAR, Cooke gave artists like Bobby Womack's group the Valentinos, Johnnie Taylor, and a young Billy Preston a place to record where the person controlling the royalties actually had their best interests in mind. It's easy to look at Sam Cooke's story and only remember the string of hits and the tragic, disputed circumstances of his death in 1964. But part of his legacy is this. He built one of the first black-owned labels in America, specifically because he'd already been shortchanged once, and he refused to let it happen to the artists coming up behind him. Even the King of Soul had to find a workaround just to get paid.
Marry you and take you home.
Number 11. The Shirelles. By 1963, the Shirelles were one of the biggest girl groups in America, with hits like Will You Love Me Tomorrow and Soulja Boy, dominating both the pop and R&B charts. Their manager, Florence Greenberg, had built her label, SAR Records, almost entirely around their success. According to multiple accounts, Greenberg had promised the 4 young singers that their royalties were being placed into a trust fund they would receive when they each turned 21. As member Beverly Lee later put it, as young kids, you're being told constantly, you're going to be rich. When the members started reaching that age, they discovered the trust didn't exist. There was no fund. Feeling deceived, the Shirelles filed a breach of contract lawsuit against SAR, and the label countersued them for leaving. An injunction reportedly blocked them from recording anywhere else, while the case dragged through the courts, effectively freezing their careers at the exact moment British invasion groups were taking over the charts they'd once ruled. The lawsuits were dropped in 1965 after both sides reached an agreement, but the damage to the group's momentum was already done. The story didn't end there. Either decades later, in 1991, a Supreme Court decision upheld a $1.2 million award to the Shirelles and other SAR artists for royalties the label's successors had never paid out. 4 teenagers from Passaic, New Jersey, helped invent the girl group sound that Motown and the entire industry would spend the next decade chasing. It took a fake trust fund, a lawsuit, a countersuit, and nearly 30 additional years before a court finally forced someone to pay them what they'd earned.
Here's something most people don't realize. Only about 10% of you watching will hit subscribe. The other 90% just watch and move on. You made it this far, so you're clearly not most people. Hit subscribe. Back to the countdown.
Number 10. Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley invented a beat that changed rock and roll before Elvis ever picked up a guitar. That signature rhythm, the one everybody from Buddy Holly to the Rolling Stones would borrow, came out of a Chicago storefront studio called SAR Records in 1955. Diddley signed with brothers Leonard and Phil Chess and became one of the label's foundational stars, recording hit after hit through the late 50s and 60s. But by most accounts, Diddley signed away his publishing rights early in his career. A decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. When artists like Eric Clapton and George Thorogood recorded his songs decades later, the royalty checks reportedly didn't find their way back to him. Diddley spent his later years publicly furious about it, once telling a reporter, "I am owed. I never got paid." He called his old boss Leonard Chess a thief in interviews. Though it's worth noting, the full picture is more complicated than a simple heist. Some researchers who later dug through the Chess business records found the brothers had given Diddley substantial cash advances against future royalties money he used, among other things, to build a home recording studio. Diddley himself was inconsistent on the subject, telling one interviewer in 1969 that he felt like family at Chess. Then, decades later, calling the whole arrangement a contract. Even the artists who lived through the Chess years told two different sides of the story. Etta James once said, label co-founder Leonard Chess treated Diddley like some kind of royalty, a sharp contrast to Diddley's own bitter public complaints. It's a reminder that the truth in these stories isn't always a clean villain and a clean victim. Sometimes it's a lifetime of resentment, tangled up with real advances, real contracts, and real disagreements about who owed who. Whatever the full truth, one thing is clear. Bo Diddley invented something the entire music industry still profits from, and he spent his final years insisting he never saw his fair share. He passed away in 2008, having spent nearly half a century fighting to be paid for the beat that started it all. Number 9. Willie Dixon. If you've ever heard Hoochie Coochie Man, Spoonful, or My Babe, you've heard Willie Dixon's pen at work. Dixon wasn't just a bass player and producer at SAR Records in Chicago. He was the songwriting engine behind nearly every major hit the label put out in the 1950s and 60s. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Little Walter, all of them built their careers singing Dixon's words. And for all of that, Dixon was paid a flat rate of around $100 a week. As the decades passed and rock bands overseas started covering his songs, Dixon began to realize just how much money had quietly disappeared through Chess's publishing arm, a company called Arc Music. When Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love turned out to borrow heavily from Dixon's own composition, You Need Love, a settlement was reportedly reached, but Dixon said he never saw a dime of it until his own manager personally audited Arc Music's books. By 1977, Dixon had had enough. He and fellow Chess artist Muddy Waters filed a lawsuit against Arc Music to recover unpaid royalties and reclaim ownership of the songs they had written. The case was settled, and Dixon used the proceeds to start his own publishing company, one built specifically so no other blues musician would ever get buried in the fine print the way he had. What makes Dixon's story stand apart is what he did next. He didn't just walk away richer, he turned his experience into a mission. He founded the Blues Heaven Foundation, out of the very building where Chess Records once operated, turning it into a resource center dedicated to helping other blues and R&B musicians reclaim royalties they'd been denied. Willie Dixon spent his whole career writing songs that made other people famous and rich. It took him almost 30 years and a courtroom to make sure his own name was attached to his own words. Number 8. Big Mama Thornton. Big Mama Thornton recorded Hound Dog 4 years before Elvis Presley ever touched it.
What do you want me to do? No! You know I spent all my money.
Her version hit number 1 on the R&B charts and reportedly sold somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million copies. Elvis's version, released later, sold over 10 million. The songwriters, Lieber and Stoller, made a fortune. Big Mama Thornton was paid a single check for $500, and by her own account, nothing more.
I didn't leave after one.
Didn't get no money from them at all, she told Rolling Stone in 1984.
You know what?
Everybody living in a house but me. I'm just living. It wasn't a one-time misfortune, it was a pattern.
That Bessie Smith first sang in 19...
Thornton also wrote Ball and Chain, a song that would later become a signature hit for Janis Joplin. But Thornton had recorded her own version first, for a small label that reportedly never issued the record, and
I just want to tell you, I was a millionaire.
Held onto the copyright anyway, meaning she couldn't collect royalties when cover versions of her own song became hits for someone else.
That's the blues.
Ain't it the truth?
She spent her career as one of the most powerful blues and R&B voices in America, and she spent much of her life broke. What makes her story especially painful is the timing. She was still alive and touring when both Hound Dog and Ball and Chain became some of the best-known songs in American popular music, meaning she had to watch, in real time, other artists get rich off records she'd made first. Alcoholism took a brutal toll on her body. She went from over 400 pounds to under 100 in a short span of time. Big Mama Thornton died at 57 in a Los Angeles boarding house from heart and liver failure. She had written and recorded 2 songs that would each go on to earn other people millions. She never saw the money from either one. Number 7. Ruth Brown. They called Atlantic Records the house that Ruth built. Ruth Brown's string of hits in the early 1950s, songs like Teardrops from My Eyes and 5, 10, 15 Hours, reportedly generated so much revenue for the label that it earned her the nickname. And for over a decade, Brown says she never saw royalties that reflected that success. Under her contract, she was required to personally cover touring and recording costs, which were deducted from anything she was owed. By the time Atlantic and Brown parted ways in the early 1960s, she had no savings to fall back on. She spent the next decade working low-paying jobs on Long Island as a single mother, her early hits fading into obscurity, while the label she'd helped build moved on without her. But Ruth Brown didn't stay quiet. After a career resurgence in the 1970s and 80s that included a Tony Award-winning Broadway run, she used her renewed platform to publicly campaign for musicians' rights and royalty reform. In 1988, backed by attorney Howell Bagel and Atlantic co-founder Ahmet Ertegun, her efforts led to a landmark settlement. Atlantic agreed to forgive unrecouped debts for Brown and dozens of other artists from her era, pay years of retroactive royalties, and contribute roughly $1.5 million to launch the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, a non-profit still helping aging R&B musicians today. What's remarkable is the scale of what changed because one woman refused to let it go. Other major labels, including MCA, reportedly followed Atlantic's lead and reformed their own royalty practices for older artists, meaning Brown's fight didn't just help her, it reshaped how an entire generation of R&B pioneers got paid. Ruth Brown didn't just win her own fight. She rewrote the rules for an entire generation of artists who came up the same way she did and never got the credit or the check they deserved. Number 6. The Drifters. Here's something most fans don't know. The man who owned the Drifters never sang a single note on any of their records. Manager George Treadwell formed the group in 1953 around lead singer Clyde McPhatter, and when McPhatter left for a solo career the following year, he sold his share of the group's ownership to Treadwell instead of leaving anything behind for the members who would carry the name forward. From that point on, according to Rolling Stone, Drifters singers were essentially salaried employees, paid flat weekly wages as low as $100, with no share of record royalties and no claim to concert fees, no matter how big the group got. When lead singer Ben E. King asked Treadwell for a raise and a piece of the royalties during the group's most successful run, the request was reportedly denied. And King left to launch his own solo career. Founding member Bill Pinkney was fired outright after making the same kind of request. Over the decades, more than 60 different singers passed through the Treadwell version of the Drifters, while splinter groups and legal battles over who actually had the right to use the name dragged on in courtrooms for years, including a federal case that lasted well into the 1990s. What makes this story so strange is that the fight over the name outlived nearly everyone involved. George Treadwell died in 1967. His wife, Faye, inherited the company and kept it running for decades afterward. And by some counts, groups touring today under the Drifters name have no actual connection to any original member at all. The Drifters catalog Under the Boardwalk, Save the Last Dance for Me, Up on the Roof, remains some of the most beloved music of its era. Almost none of the men who actually sang those songs ever owned a piece of what they built. Number 5. Lester Chambers. In 1968, Lester Chambers and his brothers had a psychedelic soul anthem on their hands. Time Has Come Today, by the Chambers Brothers, became a gold record, a festival staple, and one of the defining sounds of its era. Lester Chambers hung out with John Lennon. He performed at the biggest pop festivals in the country. And then, according to his own account, between 1967 and 1994, 27 years, he says he didn't receive a single royalty check from that song. Like a lot of musicians from that period, Chambers eventually found himself with nothing left to fall back on. He says he ended up sleeping in a rehearsal room because he couldn't afford a place of his own, picking up odd jobs just to get by, while a song he co-created kept earning money for someone else. It wasn't until donations from Yoko Ono, friends in the industry, and the non-profit Sweet Relief Musicians Fund stepped in that Chambers finally got a stable place to live and help covering medical expenses. What makes Chambers' story land so hard is how public his hit had remained the entire time he was struggling. Time Has Come Today kept getting licensed for films, commercials, and TV shows for decades, meaning the song was actively making money in the background of his life while he had nowhere to sleep. In an interview years later, he pushed back on the idea that artists like him should have known better. When you're a young group, you listen to people say, "We're going to make it better," he said. And that never works. Lester Chambers wasn't alone in that experience. By his own account, he knew plenty of musicians from his era who lived through the exact same story, while the managers who arranged their deals lived in mansions. Number 4. The Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 gave Motown 4 #1 singles in their very first year on the label. I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, I'll Be There. They were, by any measure, the label's biggest cash cow of the early 1970s, selling records, merchandise, even their own Saturday morning cartoon. And for all of that success, the group was reportedly earning a royalty rate of just 2.8%, a number that left Motown collecting the overwhelming majority of the profits from a group of children carrying the label on their backs. By the mid-1970s, patriarch Joe Jackson felt the label was sidelining the group in favor of Michael and Jermaine's solo careers. And the family made the decision to leave for Epic Records, which offered a dramatically better royalty rate of around 20%. Motown didn't let them go quietly. The label's contract with the group didn't expire until 1976. And when the Jacksons tried to exit early, Motown sued them. The label ultimately allowed the group to record for Epic, but held on to the rights to the name The Jackson 5 itself, forcing the group to rebrand as simply The Jacksons. What's often left out of the story is just how personal the split became within the family. Jermaine Jackson, who was married to Berry Gordy's daughter Hazel, chose to stay behind at Motown rather than leave with his brothers, effectively splitting the group's original lineup right down the middle over the same royalty dispute that pushed everyone else out the door. It's a strange footnote to one of the biggest success stories in music history. A family of 5 brothers who sold millions of records for one company, then had to leave their own name behind just to get paid what they were worth. Number 3. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard co-founded The Supremes. She named the group. She sang lead and backup vocals through the most successful run in Motown's history. Where Did Our Love Go? Baby Love, Stop. In the Name of Love. But as Diana Ross became the group's clear commercial focus under Berry Gordy's direction, Ballard grew increasingly unhappy with how she was treated, both personally and financially. She left the group in 1967, following a settlement that reportedly paid her attorney a one-time sum of just under $140,000 for her entire stake in the group's earnings and future royalties, with the added condition that she couldn't even market her own solo career, using the fact that she'd once been a Supreme. Her solo career failed to take off. In 1971, Ballard took Motown back to court, seeking additional royalty payments she believed she was still owed. She lost the case. Her house was foreclosed on shortly after, and she was forced to move in with her sister, at one point relying on welfare to get by. What makes this story especially bitter is the contrast. While Ballard was navigating foreclosure and public assistance, the Supremes she'd co-founded and named continued selling records and touring the world under Motown's banner. Their success, built in part on a sound and image she'd helped create from the very beginning. She had reportedly been planning an autobiography that would expose what really happened behind the scenes at Motown, and there were signs her circumstances were beginning to turn around. Then, in 1976, Florence Ballard died of cardiac arrest at just 32 years old. The woman who co-founded and named one of the best-selling girl groups in American history died in financial hardship, having lost her own legal fight to get paid for the empire she helped build. Number 2. New Edition. In 1983, 5 teenagers from a Boston housing project released Candy Girl and became overnight sensations. A modern update on the Jackson 5 sound, engineered by producer and manager Maurice Starr. The album went on a national tour. It sold well, and according to the group's own later accounts, after all of that touring and all of those record sales, each member of New Edition was paid a total of less than $2 money that had reportedly been eaten up by touring expense deductions claimed by Starr and the label Streetwise Records. These were minors. Their mothers hadn't had lawyers review the contracts. When the group found out how little they'd actually been paid, they fired Starr, accused him of financial misconduct, and took him to court. They won, securing the right to keep performing under the name New Edition and signing a new deal with MCA Records that gave them real money and creative control for the first time. But by most accounts, the label that had signed them, Streetwise Records, was later shut down, meaning much of what they were originally owed was never recovered. What makes this story sting even more is what happened next. Maurice Starr went on to build New Kids on the Block just a few years later, a group he later admitted he designed specifically to replicate New Edition's success, this time with white teenagers instead, and by his own estimate, believed that version would have been 20 times as big if New Edition itself had simply been white. New Edition survived and thrived, but the fact remains, 5 kids built an empire for a manager who allegedly paid them less than the cost of a fast food meal, and had to sue just to get free. Number 1. Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers. In 1956, a 13-year-old boy soprano named Frankie Lymon sang lead on Why Do Fools Fall in Love, a song that shot to number 1 and sold over 3 million copies. It's still considered one of the founding records of rock and roll. Behind the scenes, the songwriting credit told a very different story. Group members Herman Santiago and Jimmy Merchant say they helped write the song as teenagers. working out the lyrics and melody together before Lymon ever joined the group. But when the record was released, the label's owner, George Goldner, listed only himself and Lymon as co-writers. Years later, Goldner sold his interest in the song to a music industry figure named Morris Levy, a man later described by Billboard as one of the most controversial players in the record business, and by AllMusic as someone who built a career swindling black R&B artists out of their royalties. Levy had the copyright registration amended to list himself as co-author instead of Goldner. From that point forward, every time Why Do Fools Fall in Love played in a movie, on the radio, or in a cover version by artists like Diana Ross, Levy reportedly collected the money. Frankie Lymon, meanwhile, spiraled into addiction after his career declined and died of a heroin overdose in 1968, at just 25 years old, reportedly having never been paid the songwriting royalties he was owed during his lifetime. Santiago and Merchant spent decades trying to get their names properly credited, at one point testifying that Levy threatened to kill them simply for asking about the money. What makes this case so devastating is the timeline itself. Santiago and Merchant didn't finally get their day in court until 1993, meaning they spent nearly 40 years, well into their 50s, just trying to prove they'd co-written a song they'd helped create as teenagers on a New York street corner. In 1993, a jury finally sided with them, finding Levy's estate liable for $4 million in unpaid royalties. 3 years later, it was thrown out on a technicality. The case had been filed too many years after the fact for the court to enforce it. To this day, the official credit for one of the most important songs in early rock and roll history still reads Frankie Lymon and Morris Levy.